Hi friends, welcome to Stamping with Wow. It's Jennifer Sasaki here and it's August 14th, 2020. I'm going to be showing you how to create a pretty spectacular card using the Hooray To You stamp set. The card I'm using as my sample is made in Gorgeous Grape, and I used Melon Mambo, Highland Heather, and Champagne Foil. I also used some Winka Stella to create all that wonderful sparkle in there. And I stamped the flower clusters in the Highland Heather on top of the Gorgeous Grape paper. You can also see that I stamped flower clusters on the balloons to give them more jazz. I think this card came out pretty spectacular, but don't tell my daughter, it's for her birthday. The stamp set we're using is called Hooray To You, and it's found in the annual catalog on page 104. This stamp set's only $17, and there are no accompanying dies that you can use with this. So if you want to cut it out, you got some fussy cutting to do. The colors I'm going to use on this card that I'm making for you now is going to be Coastal Cabana, Flirty Flamingo, Mango Melody, and Magenta Madness. The cardstock I'm using right there for my card base is Magenta Madness, and that's 8.5 by 5.5 at 4 1/4, scored at 4 1/4. I'm also using Mango Melody and Flirty Flamingo and Coastal Cabana and Magenta Madness cardstock scraps to punch the balloons. You'll need a sheet of the Whisper White at 4 1/4 by 5.5. But what we're going to do on the Stamparatus is we're going to line up our happy birthday balloon where we want it on the white cardstock. I'm going to cut this Whisper White cardstock down to about a little bit less than 3 inches. So I'm lining it up closer to one edge because I want it to look more like a ribbon when it comes down. So I've placed it where I've wanted it. I've pressed the stamp image onto the clear side of the Stamparatus, and now I'm adding my, I forget the name of the color, Mango Melody to the stamp. I'm starting off with one of the lighter colors first so that I can get a good impression of the ink, and I really want the happy birthday to be in yellow, so I'm gonna do this a couple of times to get the ink truly saturated into my Whisper White paper. You can see there the image is not, it's still a little faint. That's why I like using the Stamparatus on a large stamp, because nothing's moving right now and I can get that image duplicated multiple times to get the color true. So there you can see the color is a lot more vibrant now. And now what I'm doing is I'm daubering, I don't know if daubering's a word, but I'm sponging on some Magenta Madness ink around the edges of the happy birthday balloon, and then I'm going to stamp that again onto my happy birthday my happy birthday balloon. And that's just going to give me a little bit more color, and see how my happy birthday is really popping out in the yellow, and now the flowers on the sides look like they are in Magenta Madness. So it's kind of a cute trick. So I'm done with that Stamparatus, and I'll be cleaning my sponge with my stamp chamois. So now I've cut the card base down, or the stamped image down, to a little bit less than 3 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it on top of a Magenta Madness card base, and I'm going to stamp these flower clusters that come with the Hooray For You stamp set in the 1-inch borders on both sides, because the happy birthday balloon is gonna go in the center of the card, and it's gonna leave me about a 1-inch border on both sides. So one cluster of flowers is like an outline, and the other cluster of flowers is a solid, but they don't work together. Like the outline isn't meant to go on top of the solid. So you can just see I'm filling in this empty space using these two stamps. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, your paper is going to go on top. Now it looks like I'm going to punch out my different balloon colors using this dual balloon Stampin' Up stamp. It's a pretty nice stamp. I really like it, and I got it especially to do birthday cards because I saw some really cute ideas on Pinterest using this punch. So I'm putting my cardstock right in the corner so that I'm using the least amount of my cardstock for waste, and that way this paper still has a lot more uses left in it. And that's the Mango Melody. I keep forgetting the names of these papers. Now, right now would be a really good time to stamp the flower clusters on the balloons. I'm forgetting to do that right now, and I'm going to have to do it later on after I adhere my balloons into the card, because I totally forgot I wanted to put flowers all over those balloons like my original card had. So I'm using the Stampin' Seal to place my stamped image on the card front. And I think that looks really nice. On my purple Gorgeous Grape card, I sponge daubed the Highland Heather ink around the edges of the Whisper White. And on this card, I decided I didn't want to do that. I felt like the Magenta Madness was a little too bold. I'm putting about a 3/4 inch strip of wet adhesive on one side, and now I'm going to layer the balloons that I've created, that I punched, onto this 3/4 inch strip of wet adhesive. And I'm doing it in a random pattern of one large balloon, one small balloon, just to create a little design. And this is going to go on the inside of my card. So this is where it'd been nice if my balloons had already been punched with the flower clusters, because now I'm going to have to go back and do it. And you can see when I do it, there's a couple of little owies. So I'm going to use a pencil right now to measure how much of this Whisper White cardstock I need to cut down so that my balloons fit within the inside of my card, and I still have a nice border of the white, Whisper White, in my card for my sentiment. And I just find sometimes it's easier than measuring everything is just putting a little tick mark with a pencil for where you want to cut things. And there I'm just laying it in. I think those balloons on the inside of the card is just really cute, and it adds a cute little surprise for the receiver of this card. It would be cuter if, like I said, the flower clusters were already stamped on these balloons. But I will get back to it. You'll see in a moment I realize I never stamped the balloons. But first, I'm going to make another error with my stamping of the sentiment. So I don't know about you, but it's probably better not to put a card base inside your card if you haven't stamped your sentiment on there yet. So here I go, and when I pop it up, I feel like it looks crooked. Not only do I feel like it looks crooked, it was crooked. So I decide I'm going to go ahead and finish with my sentiment. So on the front of the card, I'm stamping a Hooray and also a To You. And I'm going to use the Magenta Madness ink as well. I debated using the Mango Melody, but I didn't want more yellow on the front. I wanted to bring in more of that Magenta Madness. At this point, I'm thinking all I can see is the Magenta Madness on the sides, and in that flower balloon cluster, the Magenta Madness wasn't standing out as sharply as I would have liked. So here I'm punching a Magenta Madness balloon because I'm going to use these 3 extra balloons to cover up that sentiment that I feel stamped crooked. So yeah, I believe this is an excess amount of balloons, but there's a reason for it. So now I'm going to try again one more time to get my sentiment straight. And I'm using the Mango Melody ink for my sentiment. And my sentiment says, "Time to celebrate." So I'm pretty satisfied with it being straight, although I'll admit it's slightly off still. But now I'm realizing I never decorated my balloons. So I'm going to glue them down, and then you're going to see the flower cluster stamps come out. And I'm going to color them the same color as the cardstock. So the Coastal Cabana balloon, I will use Coastal Cabana ink. Same with all the other inks. I just like the tone on tone, and sometimes when you're stamping directly on cardstock, the ink color you use might change color, so it's, in a rule of thumb, it's easier to stay tone on tone directly on cardstock. So here we go with this flower clusters. I'm going to try not to get them all over my paper. I do an okay job with the Coastal Cabana, but you'll see when I get to the Magenta Madness, I kind of go over too many of the balloon, or too many of the flowers, and I get a clump of ink. But it's okay, the card will survive. This is going to take a moment because, you know, there's quite a few little flowers going around. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I probably should have done less as a more concept, and then it would have been okay. I think about there's where you get a messy cluster going. But I do believe the flower clusters add quite a bit of, what do I want to say? Quite a bit of dimension or interest to the inside of the card. Leaving them blank just made it look unfinished, I think. And it doesn't really take that long to add some flower stamps to these cute little balloons. And what you won't see me do is later, after I realize I forgot to add the strings to my balloons as well. So I just use some of those gel glitter pens and just draw some doodly lines around each balloon string. Now I'm adding the Wink of Stella to add some sparkle to the card. I put it on my happy birthday balloon, and then I'm just putting a little bit on the sides where I stamped the flower clusters. And then I'm trying, so it keeps looking like the ink is activating a little. So I'm making sure there's no ink transferring from the different colors that I'm using. So I'm just adding sparkle pretty much on everything. But luckily with the Wink of Stella, the color doesn't, when it dries, the sparkle looks a lot more subdued. But we're just putting the final touches on the card. I hope you enjoyed watching today. I had a lot of fun making this card. The purple one I made in the Gorgeous Grape is the one I'm going to give to my daughter. And thanks for watching, and have a great weekend. I know you could spend your time doing anything, but I truly appreciate you watching this video. Here I saw I had an ink smudge, so I'm just adding some yellow adhesive sequins. These are from the Artistry Bloom collection. And I actually like how it turned out. I used the yellow. They have an iridescence to them, so they look really pretty on the card. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend. Bye for now.